video.
Hide.
Did.
Audio.
Oh, why are you being so shy, Roger?
Aren't you going to start in about 3 minutes?
Yeah, in about 3 minutes. Take a minute to stretch, you know. You don't want to start podcasting right away as soon as you go live, or you'll pull a muscle.
Or you might not even start the stream.
Or like yesterday, you might not start the stream. It's true.
I need to get more sleep. I had very unrestful sleep.
I'm sorry to hear that.
That's all right. It's normal. I have paperwork to do in the immediate future.
Right, because you're becoming a homeowner again.
Yes. I guess it'll be good.
How many mansions do you own now, Roger?
By mansions, you mean a dwelling with 4 walls and a roof?
Why, yes, I do.
That's the barest of definitions.
Honestly, I don't know at this point.
I don't even know. I've got so many.
Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive.
I literally don't even need to work. My life is literally just one giant Monopoly game.
Ah, yes.
I wear a top hat at my super secret meeting that we have biannually.
Monocle. I'm wearing one. It's so thin you can't even see it.
We enjoy a nice luncheon of KFC buckets. Entertained by what do you call those instruments? A theremin orchestra.
Your personal theremin orchestra. I'm liking this picture you're painting.
It'd be great, right? Like some super secret compound.
Yeah.
And then there are like 12 people that show up with theremins, and they're like, you would have like the various octaves of theremins, like the big bass ones, and it's just a giant tuning fork surrounded by like a bunch of capacitors and wound wire.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
A dream to pursue. All right, you guys ready to do a show?
I think so.
All right, here we go.
Daily Tech News Show is powered by its audience, not outside organizations. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, September 28th, 2016. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Scott Johnson on his Wednesday shift, clocking in. How's it going, Scott?
It was fine. The line at the clock was long, and it makes that sound I hate if you have a headache. But other than that, it's a fine working establishment. OSHA rules are being adhered to. It's a fine place to be.
They actually are being adhered to, technically. But also joining us today, Paul Spain, host of the NZ Tech Podcast, who has been attending Microsoft's Ignite conference. Good to have you back on the show, Paul.
Thanks, Tom.
And we're going to talk to Paul in a little bit about what's been going on at Ignite that might be of interest to you, the user. But let's start off with some top stories. BlackBerry CEO John Chen put out a statement saying, quote, "The company plans to end all internal hardware development and will outsource that function to partners." So I take my current Geek shot glass, pour a little out for BlackBerry. BlackBerry has named one partner so far, Indonesia's BB Merah Putih. They will get a license to make BlackBerry hardware. There may be more coming. Last year, CEO John Chen said the company would need to sell 5 million phones for the handset business to be profitable. I assume they didn't. BlackBerry did post their Q2 results Wednesday, showing a loss of $372 million. That's 71 cents a share lost. A year ago, the company had a profit of $51 million on 24 cents a share profit. So they are not doing well, and certainly the handset business is not doing well either.
Yeah, I'd like to see something good come out. I'd like to see sort of an IBM style transition for this company. We talked a bit about this morning, but IBM successfully went from a hardware maker and a consumer hardware maker and slipped out of that and became, sort of a business enterprise services company in a huge way. So they have a foothold in that already with their enterprise solution. It would be really nice to see that parlayed into that, but it's hard not to see this news as much more than just another sad notch on the belt of this company that went from, industry darling to very quickly something nobody thinks about it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the passing of BlackBerry. It's not even necessarily the passing of BlackBerry hardware. They're going to have licenses, but it is the end of an era of BlackBerry making their own hardware, the thing that they were known for when they were RIM. Paul, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think the concern for BlackBerry is they just don't have enough diversity of products. You look at Microsoft, who haven't been doing very well in the mobile space, but of course they've got so many other revenue streams. It's not really an issue. They're not going to disappear overnight. But that's really the issue here with BlackBerry. They're losing so much money. As you say, the hardware was the big thing around BlackBerry for a long time. The BlackBerry enterprise server, those bits and pieces. What they're doing with cars. There's some revenue streams there, but I'm not sure that it's going to be enough to give them a particularly impressive long-term future. So, I would imagine those bits and pieces could well get sold off. I don't see a big future for BlackBerry as they're known today.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. BlackBerry Enterprise Server, very valuable property. A lot of their messaging and security technology is very good, if not popular anymore. And QNX, which they own, which does the embedded things for cars, could be a profitable avenue in lots of embedded systems, Internet of Things style. But you're right. It may not be enough, and it may not generate enough revenue fast enough for BlackBerry to take advantage of it. And I hate to make a fruit pun, but they seem ripe for takeover.
Oh, I hate for you to make one of those too. I want to ask you one question though. If they do recede into that weird nebulous corporate space that is like, say, the domain of IBM now. IBM used to have this name synonymous with consumer products. They don't have that anymore. So if they can they successfully do that? In other words, does the BlackBerry brand even matter? Like, I see this as, oh no, the loss of a brand, and this is another sign of a coffin being nailed shut. But could it be that all of that stuff that happens behind this non-consumer curtain that makes billions a year for many, many companies, they could settle in there maybe just fine, just nicely?
Yeah, well, the problem is that business has suffered at the expense of the handset business, as the handset business has been dragging it down. John Chen's been trying to transition them towards that, but at the same time, I don't see BlackBerry's enterprise products getting more press and more popular as time goes on. In fact, some people this morning were saying we used to use BES, BlackBerry Enterprise Server, and we don't anymore. So that's a fight as well. And that's why I kind of see them as ripe for takeover. Somebody like an IBM maybe, or even an Amazon or an HP or a Salesforce could say, we would like to take that technology and fold it into our own. If BlackBerry can't make a business on it. And it's ironic to think that the company that was RIM for Research in Motion, when it sold handsets very profitably, changed it to the name of the handsets, BlackBerry, and now isn't going to sell the handsets anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. It's all worked out for them. Apple said Wednesday they're going to move its London-based headquarters to the former Battersea Power Station. If that doesn't sound awesome, well, it does, and it should. The station's famous to many for being the cover of Pink Floyd's album Animals. It was purchased in 2012 by a Malaysian consortium and is being redeveloped into offices, hotels, housing, and shops. Apple will take up residence in the former Central Boiler House, where Cybermen used to have their headquarters in an episode of Doctor Who. Apple will move in 2021. I love the look of this place, and I'm all up on this sort of industrial renovation. I think it's awesome.
Oh yeah, no, I remember the first time I ever went to London. I flew into Gatwick Airport, took a train up, and we passed the Battersea Power Station, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the album cover come to life. So it's certainly iconic. Makes sense for Apple to be in an iconic place like that, and part of its redevelopment efforts. And Paul, the United Kingdom is trying to tout this as, hey, look who's sticking around and reinvesting in England even after the vote for Brexit.
Well, yeah, I don't know quite the level of reinvestment. I don't think they've actually bought it. If I had $200 billion in the bank, that'd probably be something would be quite nice to own. But I guess they want to be able to pick and choose what's the trendiest, coolest sort of spot for them, and no doubt that's one for a little while. In terms of their commitment to the UK, well, while they're selling product there, they're going to keep a base, and I think that there's a lot of good people that probably work for them in the UK, and it's probably going to be a little bit challenging for businesses there in terms of how they will be able to employ. I'm sure their current base will have quite a mix of workers from across the EU, and it's yet to be seen what challenges that's going to create in terms of whether all of those people are going to be able to stay there or not.
Tom, shouldn't there be pigs flying around those stacks and stuff? I mean, that's my memory.
They could get that as part of their deal. To say, hey, look, we're going to sell a lot more copies of the MP3s from animals if we could have these pigs flying around in front of our headquarters.
Yeah, and Tim Cook shaking hands with a on fire Tim Cook. I can see how this will work.
Apple Music rated by J.D. Power and Associates as the #1 consumer satisfaction music streaming service.
I'm satisfied. I like it a lot.
Yeah. I didn't like it and stopped using it after the free trial. So there you go. We are all not the same. Twitter opened its Moments features. Well, they're opening. I haven't gotten it yet. They're opening the Moments features to all users. So everyone, not just hand-selected celebrities, will be able to create their own collection of tweets to tell a story or highlight an event that will show up potentially in the Moments tab. They also, when you create a moment, it'll get tweeted out to your timeline so people can click on it and see the moment. Once it shows up, you should see a button called Create a New Moment on your homepage by your timeline. You select that, add the tweets you want to include. They give you some search options and such. Then select a cover image and then publish it, and anyone who follows you will be able to see it. Feature has launched on the web and will come to mobile soon. And when they say launched on the web, I guess it's rolling out slowly today.
Do you think they why haven't they come up with a way when they add new features like this? Twitter's famous for this now. They'll put out a new feature of some sort, if it's in the settings or if it's something more overt to your profile. They just sort of say we're rolling it out or it's coming and you'll start seeing it. And
well, part of that has to do with the fact that these sites now have so many cached versions across so many different CDNs around the world that it's just not possible to press a button and make it available for everybody at the same time.
It just seems like they should put something above the fold or something somewhere that just says coming soon. I mean, just give somebody an idea that it's coming. Otherwise, I feel like there's going to be one of those features that people just don't notice. Like it's just going to kind of come and go and you won't even know you have it. Paul, you said you've
something to highlight it. Yeah,
yours, right? Like you've got Moments working. Did you say before the show?
No. I just see Moments in Twitter, but I don't generally actually use it. It's been sitting there for a while. I don't usually go in and actually have a look at the that Moments section. So it's there in the UI to see, but no, I don't seem to be able to create them just yet.
Well, and that's another thing that Twitter will get out of this is, if you see in your normal Twitter timeline that Paul, your friend, created a moment, you'll click through to that, and that may lead you to start going to the Moments tab more often. It'll start to teach you. Like Scott was saying, like they launched the Moments tab. I always forget it's there, and I never go look at it. Maybe this will start to encourage me to explore it more.
Well, they need more engagement, so good luck, Twitter.
Let's see what else we got going on today. Other things like, how about this? The Intercept obtained Florida Department, the Intercept, meaning the Intercept, obtained a Florida Department of Law Enforcement document that shows a log of phone numbers contacted in iMessage along with corresponding IP addresses and timestamps. Apple shares these logs with law enforcement when compelled by a court order. The log comes from the server that decides whether to route a message by SMS or through Apple's own iMessage network. Apple told the Intercept that the logs are only kept for 30 days and the logs do not indicate whether any communication took place or what the content might have been. So it sounds just like servers and what they say to each other to make determinations about how this data is going to be transmitted, and that is it, or at least that's what they're claiming, Tom.
Yeah, it's both more and less than a story here. And I think the Intercept did a fair job of handling it, pointing out that Apple has said in the past that they don't give out location information regarding iMessage, that location information is end-to-end encrypted. They don't know it, and no law enforcement operation could get it. But they forgot or sort of ignore that an IP address can be used to deduce a location. Now, an IP address is not an address, right? Anybody can use a VPN, and their IP address will show them in a part of the world that they're not. So it isn't for sure, but it is often used as a shortcut to like, well, they have an IP address that lists as Canada, so they're likely in Canada. And that's what the Intercept is pointing out is Apple has sworn that location information in iMessage was unavailable. this way of divining of location might be available. Otherwise, it's a pretty uncontroversial log. This is what all server logs have all over the place. They have an IP address, they have the timestamp of the request, and then what the request was. And in this case, what the request was a phone number, and it needs that. That is what it needs to be able to route it to. Oh, is this a phone number in our iMessage system, or is it a phone number in the telephone system?
Right. And isn't this the same or the equivalent of, I mean, look, all I know from law enforcement is mostly what I see on television, if I'm going to be honest. But when somebody looks for cell phone records and they're looking for tower records and when calls took place and so on.
Yeah, it's metadata, right?
It's metadata, right? Exactly. That's the word I was looking for. So,
Paul, does this bug you at all?
No, I mean, I'm a little bit on the fence on some of these privacy things because I'm interested in the police being able to catch the bad guys. And this one here doesn't, it's not too scary, as you say. It's mostly sort of fairly high level metadata. But yeah, I guess there could be times where it gets used in a manner that's not good. Whenever there's metadata, and IP addresses and so on, that could get used.
I think it's fair enough to let
not
people
such good uses.
Yeah. I think it's fair to let people know that this is being collected. And Apple wasn't necessarily doing that before. On the other hand, like I said, all servers log things like this. So I kind of assume that this sort of thing is collected when I use things. A lot of people don't. And don't forget that these phone records, if you just open up iMessage, put in a contact info, it's going to go to the server. It's going to get that contact info. So that log is going to show that number being accessed by your IP address. Doesn't mean a communication was sent. So this not only doesn't tell you what was in any text messages that are sent, it doesn't even tell you if a text message was sent.
Yeah. To me, it's like, I always think about this thing where people worry about people taking pictures of the rear ends of their cars and you can see their license plate.
Yeah.
I've heard people get upset about that. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, we're driving all day looking at each other's license plates.
Yeah.
To get where I need to go and to do it legally, I got to have one and it needs to be registered. And that means there's metadata with that in records and in other ways. So some of this is just the process of getting stuff done. Hanging on to records for whatever limited amount of time is more about keeping them not liable when there is a court order to give that kind of data. Whether that data can glean anything or not is arguable, but at some point we have to function. So everything's not some weird security breach, and I think the internet is in the mood right now to jump on everything that might look like one.
Well, and I think this says, hey, this is another reminder that your data is being collected all the time.
Yeah.
So you need to be aware of that and fight for strong privacy rules, that you have control over your data and you know what's being collected and where.
Yeah, and how it's being used. I mean, who knows this call we're on right now? I don't know what they're storing for this. I just know they have to store something to keep it working. My IP address is part of the deal.
Yeah. I will remind you, we're live and people are watching our conversation, and I will be recording it. I am recording it and we'll post it later. So
whoa.
It's a shocking revelation, Tom.
I'm out.
I've got to disconnect right now.
Uber-owned OTTO tells Reuters it will increase its fleet from 6 to 15 trucks and have them carrying freight for customers next year. Otto wants to make self-driving trucks. So they're working with independent truckers, not only on self-driving trucks, but to try an algorithm that would match freight with drivers and provide a more efficient route. Now, that's a competitive business. Industry heavyweights like XPO Logistics and C.H. Robinson are already in the business of offering similar services. But they've got the Uber connection now, so they think they might be able to disrupt that a little. Some trucks will be autonomous on freeways next year, but still need a driver and engineer. Others will just use sophisticated navigation, mapping, and tracking. Otto has motor carrier permits with the U.S. Department of Transportation and the California Department of Motor Vehicles, and they filed for a permit to haul freight last month. So an arm of Uber here getting into the long-haul trucking business.
And you were talking earlier, specifically this morning on TMS, about XPO Logistics and C.H. Robinson also making inroads in this way, and just reiterated that now. But it is an interesting thing about this that's different than, say, the taxi business that Uber disrupted in pretty big ways with ride sharing. They're already sort of in a competitive space that's looking forward to what they need to do, next level. And this isn't as cut and dry of a thing for Uber to come in and say we're going to change the very foundation of freight from here and forward. They'll have some real stiff competition here, whereas with taxi services and general city-based transportation, that was a different animal altogether.
Yeah, it was something that was a little ossified, maybe would be a word that no one uses, but it just means something that's been hardened in place. So it wasn't that there wasn't competition in the taxi industry, but the competition sort of got into a comfortable place that was frozen in cooperation with the city. Paul, what do you make of this?
Oh, I think the interesting thing here is that Uber have so much, such a big valuation and the ability to draw in funds in large sums. So, I think that potentially will be able to be much, much better funded. And so, as we've seen their acceleration sort of globally against, for instance, Lyft, where they're just totally available in hundreds of cities. We could well see, them move very, very quickly with Otto, and in that sense, be able to sort of beat out their competitors. And whether they'll move into other countries in the same way they have done with Uber, I think there's still a fair bit of R&D to be done to get this stuff right. But it's a huge industry. I looked up the number of truck drivers in the US, and I saw a figure saying 3.5 million. I mean, it's 1% of the population are involved in this. So, anything that they can do to really improve that productivity, help these guys to maybe drive more hours and so on. Yeah, I mean, there's so much money in this. I think it's very, very it's well worth them investing in, and I think they'll throw a lot of money into it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because the ultimate goal here is to remove the driver, but that is a long way down the road. And I hate that we keep using road because it's a trucking story, but it's kind of unavoidable. In the meantime, what Otto wants to do is say, hey, we need you to be a driver, even in some of these autonomous cars that we're trying out. So we want to work with you to make your job better, easier, and more profitable. And that's at least sounds like a good pitch. I know we've got some truckers in the audience, so I'd be interested to see what they think.
Oh, yeah. Good emails this week, I hope. A new version of the Amazon Fire Stick TV, you may be familiar with the previous model, comes with an Alexa remote control. That's going on pre-order today for $40, including the remote. That's actually a pretty awesome deal. In addition to the voice command capabilities, the stick also gets upgraded from a dual to a quad-core processor. That's big news if you think your current stick is slow, like I do. Shipping begins October 20th. Alexa, making one more. Oh, sorry, I'd probably set off a bunch of people's Alexas. But anyway, making one more inroad into your home that you weren't expecting.
Add chocolate chips to shopping list. Yeah, it's the stick form factor is becoming viable, and I am curious. We heard the rumor that Chromecast is going to have an updated version that will be 4K support. We might hear about that October 4th, it sounds like. We also have and Chromecast kicked off the stick form factor. We also have new Roku sticks that were announced yesterday that we mentioned. So more and more, it's easy to find an inexpensive way to just plug something into your HDMI port and get a lot of internet television services. I'm curious, Paul, from the New Zealand perspective, how popular these things are and how useful they are.
Yeah, they're certainly growing in popularity. What we don't see is really anyone pushing them as heavily as they are here in the US. And for instance, this isn't a product that would be sold in probably many markets outside of the US. And so New Zealand's not in there yet. Alexa, of course, is really focused on the US at the moment. I think what they're expanding that into UK, is Germany maybe as well. So there's a little bit of a way to go, but I mean at that price I'll probably get one anyway. $40, and good way to extend Alexa. I've already got a bit of Alexa. So once it comes to more devices, then I think it starts getting more useful.
Yeah,
now, I'm curious, too, because we always avoid saying her name as much as possible because we have been known to set off people's Amazon Echoes when we do. Does a New Zealand pronunciation also set off the Amazon Echo?
It probably does. I have had mine mine unplugged for the last little while because it isn't quite so useful in New Zealand. So I've forgotten about that. So sorry to all the listeners whose echoes that I've set off.
No,
you know,
no worries,
the only bummer with this story, Tom, is there's no indication, at least not here, that the existing technology might extend to existing sticks or Fire TVs, for that matter, where there is voice control. I have a Fire TV where
it is. It is.
Oh, it is coming to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, it's already come.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then forget everything I said. Also, Alexa, order 24.
No, stop. Don't do that. Thanks to all those who participate in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. That's a look at the top stories. All right. So much stuff going on at Microsoft Ignite. We've talked about it quite a bit on Daily Tech Headlines. We've mentioned it a bit here. Microsoft giving some good Office updates. Very much Satya Nadella emphasizing artificial intelligence in his keynote. So, Paul, what are your top 3 things you've taken away from Microsoft Ignite? Start with number 1.
Well, I mean, it's pretty hard to pick these, but the bit that really jumped out at me to start with is what they're doing with their advanced threat analytics, and that's been available Office 365. It's coming across into Windows 10, but they're having these products work together. And the interesting piece here is how they're going to use this technology to protect us around really the most common types of threats. So, what we see is organizations and individuals get hit with these attacks via email. There are dodgy web links and malware sometimes in attachments. So they're going to be addressing both of those with the web links. Advanced threat analytics will not only just look at their database to see if this is a link somewhere bad, they'll actually take that away, and in a sort of a virtualized sense, they will click through on it and find out, does it take you to a malware site? So they're going to block you, in terms of getting through to that link, or at least alert you if they find it's not good. And then they've got this what I heard referred to as remote detonation of that technique where they do that remotely. So I quite like that name. And then doing something similar also with the attachments. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love this idea of, for a long time we've had the ability to preload a page you're likely to click on in certain browsers, or give you a preview when you hover over a link of the page by just kind of preloading. This is taking that principle and applying it to security. It's saying, hey, we can virtualize things. We're good at containers, right? They're partnering up with Docker. They're going to include Docker in a bunch of stuff. Let's make a little bit of that. Make a little container where we can remotely explode your document and see if it's filled with malware. Or we can click on this link and see if it goes somewhere without affecting the rest of your system. So then we can say, hold on, before you open that attachment, before you click on that link, it's doing something funny in our virtualized space. So we're recommending that you just hold off.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're also doing something somewhat similar with this Windows Defender app guard, which they're launching initially with Edge. What they'll be doing there, where they see something that they don't like, is they'll actually be firing up an instance of the browser effectively in its own virtual machine. So it's sort of walled off from the rest of what you're doing and helps keep you safe. The next thing up that I found interesting was what they're doing with OneDrive. They've sort of shared an updated roadmap, and they've got some new capabilities for sort of, I guess, consumers and every user in terms of particularly through the browser, where you'll be able to see previews of a whole lot more document types. So you might have an Adobe Illustrator, graphic, or Photoshop. They got some more filters for video and photos. So these are things that you'll actually be able to preview in the browser, which is not something they've had before. So I think that's pretty handy, and especially if you don't have those applications installed. And even EPS files. Do you remember EPS files?
Oh, sure, yeah. Haven't dealt with
Not
one in a
something
while.
so common these days, right? But they've obviously got an engine there that's able to render that, which I think is kind of handy, because I don't have an easy way of doing that even on my PC with the software that's installed. So yeah, some good stuff coming there. On the business front, they're finally releasing in a preview form the ability for organizations to be able to synchronize their SharePoint document libraries down to their PCs. And I
Using
think this,
OneDrive. That's cool.
yeah, I think this is going to be quite important for those that are wanting to move away from traditional file servers and haven't settled on an alternative option in terms of cloud storage. And SharePoint's got some pretty good capabilities. The only downer I heard on that is that if you're using some of those security mechanisms on your SharePoint with the rights management, that's not going to work initially with this stuff. And the rights management is probably one of those things that really stands out for SharePoint, and being able to protect your documents, against data loss and private stuff not being able to get out there. So they've got a little bit of work to do there.
Now, going back to the OneDrive previews, Scott, I know that could come in handy for you if you've got an Illustrator file or something that you want to send to somebody, but they don't have Illustrator. They could open it in OneDrive and still get a good look at it.
Yeah, this is really, really big, actually. You mentioned EPS files, and while it actually has been a little while for me as well, I get those on a fairly recent basis. Probably 2-3 months ago, I had to deal with not only EPS files, a couple of DXF files, a couple of really old TIFF files, TIFF files, many of which are, if you have Photoshop or something, you can kind of preview these things. But if you don't have those applications, or better yet, if I'm needing to have a conversation with a client about what they're actually looking for, and if they can preview this stuff before I have to go through hoops to convert and get them in formats they can see and crank it all down to some JPEG they can look at, that's actually kind of huge for people like me that deal with a lot of graphic formats and deal with a lot of document formats. So yeah, this comes as a bit of a surprise, and also a very welcome surprise. I'm excited about it.
Now, like I said, we mentioned, I think on Daily Tech Headlines for sure, the idea that Microsoft Word is going to have a little bit of AI, so it will suggest things that you can add to a document, like graphs. This is mostly for companies where you have shared resources and be like, hey, do you want to use this clip art? Do you want to use this graph? PowerPoint is going to have the ability to suggest an outline for you based on what you're writing about, which is pretty cool. But the third thing you found, Paul, is not none of that. It's something you found you found it on the show floor, right?
Yeah, so the third thing is the show floor. I mean, there's actually so much to see, and in some senses, I was walking around, I was sort of wondering, like, do I really need to do this? Surely I can find all of these companies on Google, but it's those sort of one-on-one interactions and getting hands-on products. And one of the products I came across is the headphones I'm using right now, the Sennheiser MB660.
Mm-hmm.
And these are quite cool. They remind me a little bit of what Bose have been doing with their QC35s, their new headphones, which are Bluetooth and so on, so that they can operate on a Bluetooth type basis, but you can also plug them straight into your device over USB. They've got a 3.5mm connector. And of course, that noise reduction, which the the top end headphones are doing. And they're targeting this, and they've got them certified by Microsoft for Skype for Business. So I can see people that maybe would quite like some of the Bose headphones, but would quite like their business to pay for them. It's probably pretty hard to get away with that in most cases, but these are a business tool because they work with Skype for Business. But they'll be very nice for those that want that noise reduction when they're flying. So yeah, kind of cool. I'm not sure exactly of the price point. They mentioned a price in euros to me that was around 400 euros. So that's at the top end, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts and insights from Ignite. And if you want some more, of course, you could follow Paul Spain, but also he's got some pretty copious notes in our show notes as well. Let's get to our pick of the day. Bill Russell, the not basketball player Bill Russell, different one. This one lives in North Dakota, recommends Sweet Home Wi-Fi Picture Backup. Bill says this app is Android only as far as I know. During the setup, you'll mark which folders you want to back up, what Wi-Fi network it's backing up on, so that if you're at a friend's house, it won't use up their bandwidth doing it, and what folder format you want the files to be saved into. My current setup will back up my pictures and videos as soon as I'm connected to a folder on my media PC that is also set to back up online with Crash Plan, and from there, I can decide to move files to Google Photos backed up folder if I want. Because Google Photos will compress your files, this allows him to keep pictures at their original quality, backed up online right away, but also get them into Google Photos. He says Sweet Home comes in two varieties. Free one is basically their testing beta version of the software, and the paid one is $2.95. While the software isn't pretty, he said, hasn't been updated with a modern UI, he says it's still worth the money to preserve my image and video quality and use Google Photos at the same time.
I love this idea. I love the idea of being able to pull it into a pretty easy to create situation like this, and then disperse it how you want to from there. Like get it to the drive, and then let the drive decide Google Photos or wherever else you're going to store these things on the cloud. That sounds awesome. I mean, I'm an iOS guy, but I keep hoping something like this will happen, and all I ever find is either Google Photos straight out, or I got to use iCloud, which I hate. So yeah, this seems great.
Send your picks to us, folks. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. You can find more picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. A few emails here, and the first one comes from Simon in Johannesburg, South Africa. Listening to the show yesterday about Google ultimately wanting to offer data across Africa. Absolutely, they ultimately do. But as you and Patrick mentioned, Africa is a vast continent of over 50 countries, and they're all different. And their telcos are even more different, if you can be more different. For example, M-Pesa, the mobile money operator, is a huge hit in Kenya. But in South Africa, the different mobile operators have all tried and failed at mobile money because we already have a very developed banking system. And a new bank called Capitec, which started in 2001, offers accounts for 50 cents US a month with great interest rates and ATM online banking access. So they don't really need mobile money. He says, now, sure, we all need data, and currently we have data must fall movement in South Africa trying to get data rates down. For example, one operator, MTN, has vastly different rates for data in the different countries they operate in, and South Africa has by far the most expensive. Further, many local companies have tried expanding into the rest of Africa, but most have failed because they failed to truly understand those differences. So Simon says Google's going to have to be careful.
Wow. Yeah, sounds complicated over there. And I should quit complaining that I think it's complicated here, is what I've learned.
Yeah, and you forget just how large of a continent Africa is, because we're all used to seeing that Mercator projection where it's down there looking tiny. Jonathan wrote in and said, in answer to Roger's comment yesterday, yes, there is a minimum flight altitude for helicopters, which generally don't fly lower than 500 feet, although the FAA regulations for helicopters say you must only maintain a height that is high enough to allow a safe landing. There are also other rules for staying above people and property that make the 500-foot the general rule for minimum altitude. And Jonathan says he apologizes. He made an error in his email. A colleague pointed out that while it was a contentious battle, ultimately the new Children's Hospital in San Francisco did get approval for a helipad, which is now the only helicopter landing spot in San Francisco. He's like, I'm sorry I chose that example. It was an unfortunate one. But that's good to know that that hospital did get the ability to get those emergency helicopters landing.
Yeah, I missed that conversation, but the density of certain cities is, it's obvious why they get a little skittish about this sort of thing. But it feels like that might be the exception you'd want to make.
We also got a couple of responses to modularity. Gary wrote in and said, I've been in the industry for a while. In my experience, it's not clear that the advantages of modularity outweigh the disadvantages. The major advantages are ease of maintenance and upgrades. The major disadvantages are bulk, expense, and possibly reliability issues. Basically, if you don't mind a phone that costs anything up to 50% more than a non-modular equivalent, may disassemble itself into component modules if dropped, and may need to be disassembled periodically for cleaning, and is heavier and bulkier than the non-modular equivalent, then a modular phone might be for you.
Sold.
Yeah. Do either of you guys, because Patrick was yesterday talking about how he didn't think modular phones would catch on. And of course, with Project Aura being retired, it looks like for now, that's not a thing that's going to happen. Does that make either of you sad?
Well, I don't know about sad, except I mean, okay, let me say it this way. I like the idea a lot of a modular phone, but I'm not sure the practicality holds up. I don't even really, and this is going to sound weird because as much as I love more battery life and wish I could swap my battery out, I know that if I could, it would be at least a semi-clunky mechanism, something that could pop open if I drop the phone and damage it worse or whatever. So even that kind of modularity, I have grown accustomed to not having to worry about that. So part of me likes a very self-contained, tight sort of thing. But on the other hand, maybe it's the science fiction fan in me, but I like the idea of saying I want to, hook these three things together and therefore have a thing that was greater than the sum of its parts. But
a couple of emailers said they would like the option, not so much for modularity, but for the ability to choose a different spec. So in other words, like, hey, I love a phone, but it's only 5.7 inches and that's too big for me. If I could, because of modularity, choose that exact same phone, but at 5.1 inches, maybe that might be better for them. Paul, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, we have that to a degree. The likes of Samsung that produce so many different models, you can sort of get that. I mean, what we've seen is we've moved away from modularity with our technology. You think of the old PCs, you had a different card for everything was basically a module in some form, and that's disappeared as we've got down to smaller and smaller devices, 2-in-1s and smartphones and so on. But I think there is some room for it. In fact, there's a company out of New Zealand that I think are going to be launching on Kickstarter. They've just gone through a crowdfunding campaign. They're called the Module Project. And their focus is on technology that can be built in a modular way. And what they showed off a couple of months ago locally was a portable Bluetooth speaker. And if you think of most portable Bluetooth speakers, they've got everything sort of embedded in them in terms of the battery and the electronics and so on. So if at any point, which it will happen eventually, your $200 plus Bluetooth speaker battery fails, you basically throw the whole thing in the bin. So they're working, or trash, as you say here in the US. So they're working on products, and to start with is a portable speaker that they're saying could last you 10 to 20 years, and the option of being able to move out the electronics if we move from say Bluetooth 4 or 5 onto some other mechanisms, those pieces would all be able to change, and their approach is to come up with something that's quite stylish, so you'd actually want to maybe pay a little bit of a premium price for it too.
Yeah, maybe that is the future of modularity, is with these lower power devices where the main board, the motherboard, the chips don't need to change as fast, but the external connectors, protocols, etc., could be modular. That's fascinating.
I wish that was happening with every time USB changed or any kind of connectivity I/O stuff changed. I would love it if I could just pop a card out of my PC and say, you got USB-C now. Yeah. But I can't.
Or like, I don't use these two Thunderbolt ports, so I'll pop one of them out and put an Ethernet port back in.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. Finally, Colin wanted to point out part of the SpaceX announcement that we didn't get around to talking to yesterday, and it's a good part of it. The vision is to operate a fleet of these spacecrafts, and I don't think we made that clear. For every spacecraft carrying passengers, 10 or so cargo ships will be needed, carrying supplies, building materials, and machinery. Earth and Mars reach a point of closest approach every 26 months. So in order to colonize Mars in the 2 years leading up to a departure window, the boosters are going to launch many times. We talked about one round trip. The booster goes up, separates, comes back down, launches back up to refuel. That's what they showed in the presentation. But that booster can go up many, many times over that 2 years in advance of the departure, building up that fleet of transportation ships in orbit around the Earth. So thank you, Colin, for pointing that out. Appreciate the email. And thank you, Paul Spain, for joining us. Where can folks find more of what you're doing online?
PaulSpain.com or at Paul Spain on Twitter. Those are sort of places to track me down. And my weekly podcast for anyone down under that wants to check it out is the New Zealand Tech Podcast. It's pretty easy to find.
Go check that out. Scott Johnson, what do you got to tell folks about before we get out of here?
Oh, so many things. I would recommend, if you want to see my funny take on live streaming the presidential debates in VR, go read my webcomic at myextralife.com. There's one up there today. And funny enough, it's not about politics. It's not about whose side you're on. It's about how VR has to be recalibrated all the time. So give that a shot at myextralife.com. For all else, follow me at Scott Johnson on Twitter.
Big thanks to every single person who supports this show. We could not do it without your support. You, my friends, are the best. If you're interested in how to support the show, go to dailytechnewsshow.com/support or patreon.com/DTNS. You guys are the best. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. Catch the show live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. And visit our website, dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with Justin Robert Young. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
As the laughter of Brian Brushwood fades out, we end our show. Thank you, Paul. That was fantastic, man.
Thanks for having me back. It's always good fun.
Oh, appreciate it. Anytime you're doing something like this and you're available, let us know. I love that.
Cool. Well, I mean, this year's been a bit of an odd one because I've done a lot of these things. So yeah, I'll keep in touch. Excellent. I think that and the time zone you're recording actually isn't so bad for New Zealand most of the time. Although we've just had daylight saving, so I'll have to see where that puts it. But yeah, it's always fun to come on the show. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you too. Let you get back to the conference.
Cool, and nice to meet you, Scott.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. It was awesome hanging out with you today, man.
Cool. Thanks. Okay.
All right. Take care.
All right. See you, Roger.
Bye. Show titles.
Show titles, you say?
Yes.
R.I.P. RIM. Except it's not RIM. It's BlackBerry.
I know.
Remotely explode your document.
BlackBerried. Ooh.
Wow.
Sassy.
BlackBerried.
We got a mighty Uber. BJ and the Uber. You gotta be really old. You gotta be really old to remember that.
BJ and the Uber.
Wow.
BlackBerry's final crack.
BlackBerry gives up its physical body is good too.
Yeah, I was gonna mention something. It's very interesting that IBM is always kind of used as an example because IBM was always a business company. They essentially just went back to being what they were originally.
Well, but I still think it's a valid comparison because they were a tabulating company, and then they were an office machines company, and then they were a mainframe computer company, and then they were a personal computing. Like they've stayed largely in the business world. You're right, but they've navigated lots of different maneuvers in that, and I think that could apply to BlackBerry.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I agree, and it's one of those things where IBM fell into the personal computer market, not out of a plan designed to go into that market. It was just like, hey, how do we make workers more productive?
Well, you could say that about typewriters too.
Yeah, you can, but they literally just went back to being a business company, which is what.
Well, I don't think they went back. I think they were always a business company.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, the better. Well, let's say the Snapchat thing doesn't work out with the glasses, right? You could look at that and go, well, there's a company who got away from their core competencies and they should go back to what they were doing or whatever. I mean, we don't know how that's going to turn out, so who knows? We'll say that, but that's kind of, I feel like that's what happened to IBM. Their core competency was business and mainframe and all of that, and then they were like, well, we got to get in on some of this personal computer business. Well, and then they, at some point, didn't want to do that anymore.
I mean, they came with a design that it's so weird because I think part of it is the way we understand personal computers is a little different than the landscape was back in the late 70s, early 80s. I mean, you had a clear delineation between what was considered a home computer, like a Apple II or C64, versus a business but personal computer. Those designations were basically designations for a size of machine. You had a mainframe, you had a mini computer. A personal computer was something you would be able to stick on a desk versus you being hooked up via a terminal and wires to a mini room or a mini computer or a mainframe somewhere in the back. So it's I don't know. BJ and the U-Bear at number one.
I want to go with remotely explode your document.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
Yeah. Although I do also want to comment on the modular phone design. It's like it's very interesting because modularity is people think of like the finished product, like the one the consumer holds in their hands. But from a design standpoint, they use a modular design because they want to be able to reuse the same component in multiple designs because they can spend X amount of dollars getting one type of modem, and so they have to they have a plan.
It's a good point. There are two different kinds of modularity. The one we're talking about is consumer oriented. That's what Project Ara was going to be, consumer oriented. Like you as the consumer get the benefits of modularity.
Yeah,
which is also an odd offshoot from the way IBM built their machine, because they're trying to build it. They're building the PC before it was the XT, the PC using the least amount of money available. So they pulled a lot of stuff off the shelf. It's like, well, what are we gonna do? Well, you put these expansion slots.
And that's an example of that design modularity. In fact, Gary, I didn't read it on the show, but Gary wrote a postscript about the IBM PS2 and the fact that you were able to completely disassemble and reassemble it without any tools. But the problem was that to make this, practical components had to be built with proprietary interfaces so that they could fit into that modular chassis.
Sorry, I just have to get that much. Although, the MCA sort of kind of
MCA?
The microchannel architecture is kind of what sank IBM.
Beastie Boys MCA.
Leonard Skinner's record label? What?
So many things. I'm sure in the future, FBI will be something completely different, like 200 years from now.
Fillmore bracket internal. I don't know.
It'd be like Fruit Basket Incorporated.
There you go.
It'll be like some Whole Foods knockoff. But you'll shop like you shop at IKEA. You have to assemble your own dinner. It's a joke.
It'll all be flatbread. Get it?
Well done.
Flatbread, flat vegetables, and cold-pressed meats.
Carl Buddig. Carl Buddig is the IKEA of meats.
And then they give you like really crappy knives and stuff and cutlery, like packaged in with everything. It's plastic knife.
It's all just Allen wrenches. You have to eat with Allen wrenches.
How come your mom makes all these cookies look in a hexagonal shape? Sure.
I actually really like IKEA's food, though.
I do too.
Yeah.
I like it.
I only like their meatballs. I don't like anything else.
The lingonberry sauce. They have good cheeses usually.
Got weird pickled things I like.
And the wassa bread, all that Scandinavian cracker bread.
I tried that Christmas cola that they put out. That
yeah, it was all right.
I didn't like it at all. Camilla loved it, but she's
she's from Yeah, she's Swedish.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
You learned to love it, I suppose. Well, and Scott and I have Scandinavian blood, so it makes sense that we like IKEA things.
Yeah, it's part of our soul.
Yeah.
Do you like the pickled herring? Is it the pickled herring?
I love pickled herring.
How about you, Scott?
Stop stereotyping me, Roger.
I would rather burn a hole in my neck than eat
pickled herring.
I tried lutefisk once, and I politely said that
lutefisk is good.
Very unique.
we tried that on TMS. We had to test it, and it was horrifying.
I have a wide palate, though. I think that many people in the audience already know this.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
I watched you slam Clamato in front of people on a stage.
It was all right.
And then yogurt soda. And then
the yogurt soda was fine. I actually liked that.
Anything we gave you, you would just eat.
Yeah. I was that guy.
That means you have no taste buds. I'm wondering which flavor
No,
or
it
what.
doesn't. No, it doesn't. It doesn't
Maybe
mean
you don't
that,
have
does it?
Maybe you don't have bitter taste buds, or perhaps salty taste buds.
Maybe that's it. Maybe I don't have the bitter as much.
I wish
I got a lot of bitter.
You got enough for both of us.
Oh, this bread is the most bitter thing I've ever eaten.
Yeah, because I don't taste cilantro as soap.
I neither do I. I love cilantro.
So I don't know if that.
My wife hates it. She says it's gross.
There's a few other things like that where I'm like, oh no, it doesn't. Like my wife thinks that sea urchin, the uni sushi, she thinks it tastes like dirt, and I don't taste that at all.
I'm trying to think if I've ever had that.
It tastes like peanut butter to me. It's so good.
What does peanut butter taste like to you?
It tastes like sea urchin.
Tastes very earthy.
This
don't
peanut
like-
butter tastes like sea urchin. This sea urchin tastes like peanut butter. Two great tastes.
That Icelandic like salt licorice stuff. That's enough to put me in a hospital. It's so gross. Ugh. If you've never had it, be
I
lucky.
don't know if I've had salt licorice.
It's bad.
Huh.
I've had
Is it
ouzo.
like Ling He Mui? The like
I don't know.
Ling He Mui is the it's a Chinese thing that has what's the salt? It's not a salt. It's like a licorice powder on the outside of like plums.
Oh,
dried
yeah,
plums.
I know those. My mom used to eat them all the time.
Yeah. A lot of
Part
people
of-
hate that. I love those.
That sounds awful.
Well, it depends because there's it works better at least to my taste for certain fruits because they do plums, but they do other
Yeah, they do cherries
fruits
too.
as well. Yeah. So it really depends. It also depends on manufacturer. I used to hate this one because it tasted really like you tasted that more than the fruit, and it was just that particular producer. They just packaged too much.
I used to go to the grocery store when we get to Hawaii and buy them because they just carry them in the drugstores there. It's funny that I don't see them here.
Huh.
I would think the LA, because I'm pretty sure I found them here and there in San Francisco.
One thing I miss eating, and I should, is the dried beef jerky. And it was really weird because it was kind of like lo song. It was kind of hairy,
Mhm.
but that's just the meat fibers from the drying process.
Mm.
But it wasn't like a Slim Jim. It was just literally like you slice the meat, and as you dry it out, it just kind of shrivels up and turns into a little weird shape.
But just hearing you say meat fibers is enough to make me gag.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I would try to get
one of those Harry Potter plants that scream when you pull them out of the plant pot.
screaming mimes or
No. Pretty sure that's not it. No.
That's not it.
They're kind of hairy. They kind of.
Well, there's like so many foods that I used to try to pawn off on non-Chinese people, and they wouldn't eat it. It's like, that's gross. It's like, you haven't even tasted it yet. Just don't look at it, and then put it in your mouth.
I had a dog tongue in China. That was bad.
Canines. The
I
problem
don't
with
want to
eating
eat dogs, but
yeah.
I do eat cow tongues.
Oh,
I love cow tongue. Lingua's great.
Lengua guisada.
I usually get it in a burrito or taco.
So
But I'm always
good.
worried about. But see, I used to be worried about cholesterol because it's high in cholesterol.
Oh,
But
is
then
it?
I realized it's you don't cut cholesterol that way.
Yeah.
So I got to find me that taco truck again.
Mandrake. Thank you, anonymous chat person. Mandrake was the name of the little.
Sorry,
Harry Potter
is the
thing.
screaming Mimi an actual plant?
I
no.
don't think it's a plant. I think it's just a nickname, kind of.
It's for some girl in high school that screamed a lot.
She's
Maybe
another
it's
screaming Mimi.
Maybe it was a video game RPG I played where one of the
Oh.
monsters you fight is called the Screaming Mimes, and they're just like these
Perhaps.
violets that are angry.
Salt licorice. Here you go. Ugh. Gustav's double salt licorice.
So it's just licorice but salty.
Ugh.
Yeah, but it's black licorice.
And you don't like black licorice anyway, right?
I already
Yeah.
don't like that, period. But then making it all salty and hard. Bleh.
Because I love licorice.
You
Honey,
like black
all of that
licorice?
stuff. Yeah.
So does it. You guys are weird.
Black licorice reminds me of ouzo, so I don't like it.
Well, yeah, that's all of
It's a joke.
piece. Yeah.
It's a joke.
Oh, I get it, Roger.
Do you?
I do.
Actually, I don't like Twizzlers and I don't like red vines.
Oh.
I only like
Now our paths diverge because I love red vines and I like Twizzlers a lot.
I don't
I-
consider those licorice.
Mm.
To me, those are just candy, and I like them. I
I
can't remember
like-
which one I'm supposed to like, though.
I like the purple licorice and the orange pink.
I believe we are a Red Vines house. This was made very clear to me at one point that this is the version that we don't do one, we do the other. And I remember it having both growing up, so I didn't have a preference. To me, it was like, oh, it's like, they're just two different brands of the same thing. They taste the same to me, which is
They
heresy.
don't taste the same to me. Like Twizzlers
That's 'cause they
or
don't
red
have
vines
taste buds.
taste plasticky. One of them tastes really plasticky to me, and I won't eat them. Like, I just think they're nasty.
But you don't remember which one?
No, because I generally don't like eat. I only
Either
like
one.
purple licorice or the
Purple?
grape or the grape,
Wow.
the grape or the peach.
The
orange
rare
one.
purple licorice.
It's not that rare. I used to get it at Shaw's ice
No,
cream.
they have a Dr. Pepper flavored Twizzler that's amazing.
Really?
Yeah, I love that.
I used to like Dr. Pepper flavored bottle caps. You remember
Oh,
bottle caps?
Red Vine
Candy?
sells them. I didn't realize that. There's grapevine twists, grape laces.
Grape apes.
Grape aid.
The first time I ever went to a conference of any kind was the International Food Technologists Conference in St. Louis, Missouri. My dad went to it every year. It was his CES, the IFT conference. He always talked about it. And so when it came to St. Louis, because it would move around to different places every year, when it came to St. Louis, he took me one day. He's like, I'm going to take you to IFT. I'll get you a badge, get you in, which he did. And, you know, as we know, in conferences, they give out samples of things.
Sure.
So I got free samples of all of this candy.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, conferences are the best thing ever. And the one I remember particularly was it was the first time they had made a Dr. Pepper flavor of bottle caps candy.
Oh, wow. I would eat that.
It was good.
I would eat that now. I don't know why I'm so into it, but I love it.
You're into Dr. Pepper, huh?
Yeah, I like
Just
Dr.
moved
Do you
to
like
Texas.
Mr. Pibb?
It's okay. I like Dr. Thunder too. I
Dr. Thunder.
Oh, yeah, is Mr. Pibb? I always forget. Like Mr. Pibb went away for a while and then it came back. Is it even still around?
Yeah, you can get it at Del Taco, I think, has it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they still make Pibb, but the Dr. Thunder, I think, is the Walmart brand of Dr. Pepper.
It's pretty Sam's Club brand.
It's indistinguishable. I think it's pretty good and it's cheap. But I'm trying not to drink a lot of pop, so
Interesting.
soda, whatever people are calling it.
Pop soda. Some people just call it Coke.
I call it gut juice.
Oh.
It's weird. Like
helps
I've
me
gotten
not
so
drink
used. I'm so used to watering down beverages now because I like it less sweet. So
It's
like
like the ancient Greeks with their wine.
well, I like if you go to the soda fountain, I load up all the ice and then I only put it half filled with soda and let it kind of melt. I know it sounds nasty to a lot of people, but it's just so sweet. Like soda today is too sweet. It hurts my teeth.
Man, there's a place in Pasadena called Burger and Pie.
Oh, I think I've driven by there.
They make burgers and pie, homemade, everything. The burgers are good. The burgers are solid, but you go there for the pie because the pie is homemade and delicious, and it pairs perfectly with the burgers. And then they do mixed fountain drinks.
Okay.
So you order a Diet Coke, and I think they might have Sprite. I can't remember. But it's all hand mixed the old fashioned way. And it's
With
so
syrups?
good because it's not as sugary.
Now, is it so? Then they just add soda water, so it's sort of like the way they do Italian sodas.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Yeah, but there's more to it. It's not with Italian sodas, they just take the big long spoon and they kind of stir it, right? There's something they do with a machine that mixes it. Now I don't know what it is.
Fill it with corn syrup.
I can tell a big difference when I eat regular sugar now over corn syrup. It just makes me feel as crappy.
Well, corn syrup, they use corn syrup a lot, not just because it's cheaper, but because it spreads evenly a lot easier than if you tried to mix like powdered sugar.
We started getting like maple syrup that has real sugar instead of corn syrup. So much better. It's like a night and day for me. Same with like if I get one of those Coke, Mexican Cokes or whatever versus a
U.S. Coke.
It's just like it's like I drank something totally different. I don't feel like a piece of garbage when I'm done.
Well, I don't know if this has happened yet, but apparently they were going to start making the Mexican Coke with corn syrup. So they decided to continue to make a small amount with sugar that they would then export to only be available in the United States.
Because it sells well here as an alternative.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's so funny to me. That snake is eating itself. But it's like there's a new kind of Nick, what's that new Pepsi called? Pepsi 1893, and it's
but isn't that booze or no?
no.
Okay.
Well, if it is, I've been doing something very illegal with my children.
I just see those ads, and I'm always scratching my head. So, like, is it booze or is it just really like old recipe Pepsi?
It's old recipe Pepsi, but it's good. Oh, I could drink it now, and it's real sugar, which is the part I like, I think.
All right, folks. I'm going to take us out. We're published and everything. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later. Bye.